We begin this morning with a Fox News alert. Israel now ordering the IDF to respond forcefully after claiming Iran violated their ceasefire agreement. The IDF saying missiles were launched from Iran after the midnight deadline imposed by President Trump.
In just the last few minutes, Israel ordering high-intensity strikes against regime targets in the heart of Tehran, and this violation of the deal comes less than an hour before the President of the United States is expected to leave for the NATO summit. You're watching Fox and Friends First on a Tuesday morning that is moving very, very rapidly. I'm Todd Pyro.
And I'm Carla Shimkitz. Let's get right to Mike Tobin with the very latest on the ground in Israel. And Mike, here we go again.
Well, things are moving very fast, Carly and Todd. Iranian state TV now denies that they will that the Iranian government, the Iranian military, was responsible for those one or two missiles that went into Israel's north. We're still looking to confirm the specific number on that. Now, that missile was intercepted and landed without injury, but not without consequence. As you mentioned, Israel's defense minister and the chief of general staff have now vowed fierce retaliation for the violation of a ceasefire that wasn't quite 4 hours old when those missiles came into the north of Israel. But again, Iran is denying that they took part in that. Now, as the ceasefire was preparing to take hold, about 5 waves of ballistic missiles came in from Iran. One of them hit down here in Beersheba, where I'm standing right now. And as we look behind me, you can see what looks like the impact site from that missile is indeed the impact site from the missile. You can see rescue crews right now going through the rubble, searching for any possible people who are trapped in the rubble. It should be mentioned that no one is missing right now. They're just operating out of abundance of caution. One of the things I've seen the rescuers doing today is forming up an old-fashioned bucket brigade, carrying rubble out of that building just to clear as much space as they can. Now, we do know that a family of 4 was inside of the bomb shelter. That bomb shelter took a direct hit. Here is a spokesman from Homefront Command.
What we understand currently, that the family was inside the shelter, and unfortunately, when we have a direct hit, a direct strike of a missile in the shelter, it did not always help.
So those bomb rooms do a good job of protecting people in the blast radius, but when you have a powerful warhead like the one that came down here and it takes a direct hit, all 4 of those people perish. There was an additional 26 people who were injured by the force of that blast, and their injuries vary. So we're watching the situation. When these missiles were fired, the Israeli fighter jets were in the air over Iran. They detected the missile launches and struck back at least some of those missile launchers. So that has taken place all today. But the situation now, of course, is very fragile with Israel's defense minister and the chief of general staff vowing to strike back at Iran for what they say is a flagrant violation of the ceasefire. Iran now says they didn't do it. You could be looking to one of the other rogue elements, a rogue element inside of Iran, or one of the other proxies that are operating in the region. Guys, back to you.
Yeah, and Mike, what I'm hearing you say is at least one missile was intercepted after the ceasefire went into effect, but Iran is denying that it took part in that. So if not Iran, then who?
Correct. One missile. I'm sorry, my earpiece is going in and out, but at least one missile was intercepted. No injuries reported on the ground. The tops of the Israeli military saying that the ceasefire has been violated and saying that they'll respond.
All right, Mike Tobin live for us in Israel. Mike, we will check back in with you as warranted. With that, let us bring in former Deputy National Security Advisor and Heritage Foundation Vice President of National Security, Victoria Coates. And Victoria, you heard Mike Tobin say Iran is denying that their government was responsible for these strikes. But assuming that that is not correct, assuming that the Iranian government is ultimately responsible, is this a mere hiccup? Can the ceasefire be saved? Or has Iran potentially crossed a red line from which they cannot come back?
Well, Todd, unfortunately, this is the kind of messy period that generally happens around a ceasefire, where a side that is typically on the losing side is going to try to get a little bit more. They're going to try to have a last strike, something for domestic consumption that they can say that they, are still powerful. And we've seen what Iran is capable of. What they do is they fire at apartment buildings, at families sheltering in bomb shelters. This is hardly the stuff of a great military victory. Israel, on the other hand, is flying with impunity over Tehran right now, and I'm sure will take another strike on a strategic target, something like the missile launchers that will prevent Iran from doing this again. But it doesn't take away from what President Trump has achieved, which is that he's gotten both sides to agree to a ceasefire. It is time to end this war and consolidate Israel's and America's gains.
So you think that despite this, despite the fact that Israel is claiming that Iran launched a missile into Israel, and they're saying that the ceasefire is off, do you think that, like Todd said, could this be a hiccup? Could things proceed more peacefully in the hours to come?
Well, Carly, I never want to refer to the death of a family of four as a hiccup. I mean, we have to be mindful of the seriousness of that.
Yeah, and
but
Victoria, understood on that point. The death of the family took place, and horrible that it happened. It took place before the official ceasefire went into effect, and now that and now we're in a new world where every party agreed to a ceasefire, and then a missile was launched. So, how do people proceed forward?
Well, I think that we can proceed forward if the situation calms down, if Israel does take a retaliatory strike, and then we can get back to the ceasefire, because I think Israel has achieved largely their war aims. That's what they said last night. And so I think if the president gets involved, if Iran understands the seriousness of the situation, and that both Israel and the United States are prepared to go back in if they don't start behaving more rationally.
Yeah, I cannot imagine the president is happy with these latest developments out of Israel. How should President Trump respond?
Well, I think President Trump will respond decisively. I mean, I think he's going to make very clear to the Iranians these are the terms. They are in an extremely weak position. Both Israel and the United States can act, as I said, with impunity against them. And so it is beholden on Iran now to start becoming a more responsible partner here. They have been given every opportunity, both before this war started, to engage in diplomacy, and now the president yesterday offering them the opportunity to come to the table and come to terms. Now, his patience, as we've discovered, is not infinite. So this better shut down now, and they'd better come to the table in the mood to make concessions so that we can get to the end of this war.
Yeah, and President Trump is going to be leaving for the NATO summit in just a few hours. What will the conversation during the NATO summit be surrounding all of this?
Well, I think it's going to be about the need for NATO to take a lot of responsibility for what's happening in Europe. This is a big demonstration of all of the obligations the United States has around the world, not just in Ukraine, also in the Middle East, also in the Pacific. So I think the president is going to go back to one of his signature issues, which is making the rest of NATO pay its fair share for the defense of the alliance. And we have the top 10 economies in NATO, the top economy being the United States. The other 9 are clinging at 2% of GDP to defense, not the 3.5 they need to be at. They're not even close. And so I think he's going to be laying down the law there and saying if NATO is going to proceed into the 21st century, if it's going to be relevant, it has to literally have cash on the barrelhead here. We don't want pledges. We don't want some sort of projection of maybe getting to 2% in 3 or 4 years. We want them to pay up now.
Assuming, for argument's sake, that Iran, their government, is responsible for these strikes and not some proxy group like Mike Tobin alluded could be the case in light of the fact that Iran is denying that they are involved in this. Did Iran pick this timing in order to embarrass President Trump as he heads to NATO? And if so, how big of a miscalculation is that?
Well, I don't know how specific it was in terms of embarrassing the president. I would say that it was a miscalculation on the part of Iran if they were responsible. It's kind of this, as I said, this gray zone around the establishment of a ceasefire that it can be kind of a difficult period. But I think the key is for him to send the message to the Iranians that this is unacceptable. That if they want to get to diplomacy, they're going to have to start acting responsibly. And otherwise, he's going to take the gloves back off and let the Israelis go back in.
And this is the statement from Defense Minister Israel Katz. I have instructed the IDF to respond forcefully to Iran's violation of the ceasefire with high-intensity strikes against regime targets in the heart of Tehran. So with that, would you say that the war is officially back on right now?
Well, let's see what the Israelis actually do. I think some targeted strikes in response to this would be proportionate, and then the ball goes back into the Iranians' court. So I think we'll see what the next couple of hours bring, but this was not a good move on the part of the Iranians, but I do think the ceasefire is recoverable.
And finally, Todd alluded to it, but Israel is saying that one missile was intercepted, and Iran is denying that they took part in it. Could it have been a proxy and not an Iranian strike, or is Israel able to tell and determine that this was coming from Iranian airspace?
Well, if we haven't figured that out yet, Carly, we will be able to figure out in pretty short order. And I would be a little bit surprised because the Iranian proxies have been remarkable for their silence over the course of this 12-day war. We haven't seen a single rocket fired from Hezbollah. Hamas has been quiet. Even more surprisingly, the Houthi have been quiet. So it's possible one of them might have fired something off. But as I said, the Israelis are going to be able to tell pretty quickly what the trajectory of this thing was. And I'm sure they will publish those results.
And to that point, it would be odd for the proxies to act now, which really does call into question Iran's denial of them being responsible for this strike. Victoria Coates, we threw a lot at you. Breaking news literally minutes before our show started. We appreciate you and your insight this morning.
I'm Steve Doocy. I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.